Let's stop here and focus on your series on Jaren Jackson Jr. Four-part series. The first two parts have published. When you're a beat writer, and I say this as a former beat writer, there's a certain day-to-day rhythm of just like there's always something to do, and there's always something to report, and there's always something to type, and there's always a plane to catch, and it's busy. And yet when you sort of identify interesting aspects of something under the umbrella of your beat, you want to try to find time to explore it and possibly do something like what you're doing right now. So I imagine you've been overwhelmed. I imagine you've been super busy, but you've created something that's going to be enjoyable for Grizzlies fans. So if you can, just sort of walk me through the process. Obviously, Jaren Jackson having the best season of his career. He's a two-time All-Star now. He's headed for All-NBA stuff, and you decide, I want to tell this story. How did you go about it? Why are you doing it?
Yeah. I mean, I have to give Jaren some credit here because I've known him now for 6 years on this beat. And so, when you're around those guys often, you build relationships. And it was actually Jaren that came to me and said he had interest in me writing about his newfound passion for videography and creating videos and telling his own story. And he's a person that strongly believes in individuality and creative expression and all of that. And I've covered a lot of that over his career. And so, he said, I would really love for you to write about this. And I was like, great, you're Jaren Jackson Jr. Of course I would love to write about it. And so we met up. If you read the first piece, we went to a dinner in Dallas, and it was to some degree Jaren telling the stories about filming and his passion for filming, but also everything that he did over the summer, from catching snakes in the Everglades to, going to bare knuckle fights and being backstage at wild concerts and, going to Tokyo and it totally blowing his mind and changing his perspective on how he sort of views the world and views his own, pace of work. Digging into all those stories was awesome, and I think it gives Grizzlies fans a chance to see him in a light that maybe they didn't see him. I also wanted to be very careful that it wasn't something like Jaren saying what I did on my summer vacation, right? Or like the feeling where it was like him bragging about what he gets to do because of the blessings that he's had in his life and where basketball has taken him. It wasn't about that. I sat with Jaren at that dinner table for 4 hours, and he talked non-stop about how much he loved it, right? This isn't a message about all the cool stuff Jaren gets to do. This is a message about, hey, you know what? When I go to Fashion Week, let me tell you what I do at Fashion Week. And we do all this stuff. But you know why I get to do that stuff? Not because I have clout or because I have money. It's because I care so much about this that the designers want to talk to me about it. We can bounce ideas off of each other. Everything is constructive. And there's something to be said just about his spontaneity, his, ability to handle all of these things at one time and what he's learned. And I think what he's figured out is when the cameras are on and he's like, all the music in it is his music. He's directing this. He's giving the instructions on how to film it. He has a vision for what he wants to do. He's pulling from documentaries on Netflix, right? About some of the most interesting people in the world to him. And he's doing all of this, but what he's essentially learned is I'm most happy when I'm busy. I'm most happy when I'm getting to do all of these other things. And you might think that this is a distraction from basketball for me, but it is not. If anything, it drives me even more to the game, because when the cameras are on, the pressure's on for you to look good, right? The pressure is on for you to train. And he took a Grizzlies assistant with him every single place he went, from Tokyo. I mean, the stories about them trying to book gyms in Tokyo with nobody that speaks English is hilarious on its own. But I think if you read, you really understand that this is not about Jaren bragging about all the things he gets to do. This is about Jaren showing the way that he expresses himself and this feeling of individuality. I think my favorite quote from maybe the entire piece was he said, "What you do is cool because you do it," right? That's what makes it cool. It is not about the fact that you're getting to do awesome stuff. It's about the fact that you are doing it, and that is what makes it cool. I've just had a blast putting it together. It has been a struggle for sure. There's a lot going on in the beat. I'm thankful for Chris Harrington, who's been able to help me out. But this is my favorite project I've done so far. So I really hope people will read it.
Well, like if Jaren were nothing more than an awesome basketball player, that'd be fine with me. I know plenty of people who are just awesome basketball players, and that's good enough. But I prefer well-rounded people. I like passionate people. I like people who are naturally curious and interested in other things. And, I have a lot of interest outside of what my day-to-day job is. And, I don't spend every day, writing about them or even talking about them with other people too much. But they're things that I'm interested in. And like, I bet people might be surprised to get a hold of my Spotify podcast list and you see the things that I actually listen to. They're not really basketball podcasts or even sports podcasts. I have interest outside of sports. And so I think, I like reading this stuff about Jaren Jackson Jr. because it reminds me that there's more to him than just being a super tall, super gifted, super talented basketball player. Like I say this sometimes about athletes or people I cover in the industry. And when I'm trying to give them a compliment, I say, I would like that guy to be a starting front court player on my team and also wouldn't mind him being my neighbor. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. strikes me as the type of person that I love him being a part of my favorite basketball franchise, but if he happened to live next door to me and like we just sort of stood out in the front yard and had interesting conversations every once in a while, that would be fun too. He strikes me as that kind of person.
Yeah, he is definitely that type of person, and just his energy is so infectious for all of these things. And one of the pieces that'll be out on Thursday, it's about his trip to Tokyo, and I mean he almost described it as like the most inspired he's ever felt. And he came back to begin the season following that trip, the serious training in Memphis. And, he was looking at life through an entirely different lens because he went to Tokyo. And what he learned in Tokyo was that people in Japan have this culture where they work extremely hard. They don't work 9 to 5s, right? He said you go out on the street, it's midnight, it's 1 a.m., and some guy is fixing buildings or fixing a road, and he's doing it with a smile on his face. And he lets you walk past, when you're walking by on the street and he's fixing the road, he lets you walk past, he smiles at you, and then he gets right back to work. And it's 1 a.m, right? And he even talked about, some of the struggles of that, some of the Western stereotypes about, that level of culture and how disappointing it might be that, Japan has one of the higher suicide rates among, high income countries in the world. And like, he's clearly educated about all of these things. He has so many different interests. But Japan to him really was like this experience where he said he felt so seen, right? I know I'm not crazy. I'm doing all these things and I'm doing them in such high detail and they're the most important thing in the world to me. And here I am in a culture where everybody is the same way. And it was just, to him, this incredible experience. And it honestly taught him a lot about how he spends his money. And he's got a lot of money. He's able to pretty much do whatever he wants in this life. And he's very blessed and grateful that the Grizzlies have offered him these contracts and, it made him the person that he is today. But he's like, you know what? What's important to me isn't necessarily the material things. What's important to me is what I care about. And if I choose to make that storytelling, then that's what it's going to be. And the best part about the series is that I can put beyond the first one. If you read the first one yesterday, like if you go read today and the last 3, you can put visuals to it because it's all on video because that's what this is about, right? So when Jaren tells a story about this elephant going crazy at the Miami Zoo, you click the video on the story, you watch the elephant go crazy and Jaren freak out about the elephant. So, it's really fun. It's really fun. It's unlike anything I've done, but it's fitting because he is seriously one of the most interesting players in the NBA. I believe that wholly.
The 4-part series is called Triple Vision. First part published yesterday, second part today. Wednesday, Thursday, the series will be completed. I imagine as somebody who's done stuff like this and taken on projects when I'm already overwhelmed because you feel like, I don't have time to do this necessarily, but it's something I really want to do. I imagine this was your experience. As you're going through it, you're like, I don't have time for this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. I don't have time for this. And then you get done with it, and you couldn't be happier that you found the time to do it. I imagine that on some level, that's the way you feel.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. And like I said, the fourth part, which will be out on Thursday, is my favorite. So I would stick around for the full thing. But it's been a real joy to do it. And like I said, I'm thankful for the people that have been able to step in. And hopefully moving forward, I think we'll see that, there might be opportunity for me to branch out beyond just the Grizzlies. So that's coming later. But I'm definitely excited that this was able to work out, and we were able to do this with Jaren. And I'm thankful that Jaren appreciates local media, right? Shout out.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.